Hello again. We're going to now read from a text file into an array of records. In the previous lesson, we created our array of records. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. So here's your record and here's your array of records. And now we're going to read from a text file into the array of records. Where's our text file? There's the text file. That is the data that came from this Excel spreadsheet over here. It has been converted into text file format, comma separated, and we are now going to read each line into each array index of our array here, and for each index of the array we will store a record for each category of the lines. There's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 categories here, 6 things separated by commas. If you look at the Excel spreadsheet, you can see it clearly there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items per line, and in the text file they are separated by commas, which is where you get the term CSV, or comma separated version of an Excel spreadsheet. But let's worry about the job at hand, which is to open our text file for reading. So here's the Python code for doing that. You say open file equals open, and in double inverted commas sales.txt, and comma we write an R because we're going to read from it. If we're going to write to it, we'll write a W, in other words creating it as well. If we're going to just add a line to it, we'll put an A there for append, but because we're only reading from it, we'll write an R. Now, you may wonder, why do we have an X equal to 0 here? But before we go on to that, I forgot to mention we should really write a procedure. Def write to file. We can call it anything we want. And the reason why I want to write a def is because it's modular programming. So we are now going to indent all of our statements suitably to match our function called write to file. It's actually a procedure because we won't be returning any result from this method, or def as you would like to call it. Well, def is the reserved Python word to use when you define a function or a procedure. This particular code is a procedure. It does not return anything. It just sets our global variable called ARR sales. Can you see it's a global variable? It's not inside any definition or def function or procedure. It's declared here so that all the functions and procedures can use that ARR sales. That's a very important point to note. Now, the procedures to write from a comma separated file in Python is quite easy. First of all, you open it for reading, as I said, and then we're going to have a counter to keep track of every line of our text file, and which will then be used to add entries into our array. As you can see, it says there AR sales, there it is, box number X. that x starts at 0, and then we have a loop, and inside the loop it's a for loop, and inside the loop, it's all indented, we are going to add 1 to x every time, and this is going to be, x is going to be incremented for every line in our text file. This text file has been given a name, open file. You can call it anything you want. You can call it S file or sales file. That open file is actually a variable name which you can make up, and in this case we are saying that this open file name is actually equal to sales.txt open for reading. So Python is now going to link that open file variable to our sales.txt and for reading specifically. So just remember, open file is a variable. You call it anything you want, but if you say the word open and a text file name and whether you're going to read, write or append, you have to put that second parameter in there. And when I say parameters, do you know what a parameter is? It's the things in brackets. This is actually a function, and in brackets we have two parameters. One is the text file name, and the second one is the letter to describe whether we're reading, writing or appending, and these parameters are separated by commas. Anyway, we set our counter to 0, and then we use our for loop to go through every line of the text file, and that line, each line of the text file, is represented by this variable called current line. You can call it anything you want, S line or sales line or one line, but in this particular code here we've called it current line. So this for line in open file, you see open file is that variable name there. The word line here is also a variable, refers to the one line or each line. So if you use the word each line here, I can say each line, and I can write it here as well. Basically it's describing the line. What's going to happen to that line when it's read into current line? It gets stripped and split according to a comma, and it's quite magical actually. If we had to look at our text file, and I'll show you a diagram of how this happens. So there's the text file, okay? So that takes that line and strips it into a little table. So the first table, the first row of the table will hold the sales number, in this case from the line I've just copied, 1264. The second box will hold the date, 101-01-2024. It's really quite magical when you think about it. Then the salesperson is going to be the next one, Charlie Barnes. And take note, this is all from just one line, the first line that I'm referring to particularly of the text file. The third one is going to be a yes or no. The second, the third one. It's actually first, 2, 3, 4. The fifth index, which is index number 4, because it starts numbering at 0, will hold the unit sales price, and the last one will hold the quantity sold. Now remember that these items, the string items, are going to be stored as strings. So we need to remember that they will be represented as strings, and we refer to them with double inverted commas, which is why I'm typing it here into this little magical array. So this basically acts as an array. This is an array of its own. Yeah, maybe we could have just put it across like that, you know, instead of vertically, so that you can not be so confused. It is confusing to when you've only seen arrays represented horizontally in the diagrams that I've shown you. It would be confusing, wouldn't it? No, I don't want to do that. Sorry about that. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way. So we will then have the following. You'll have the sales number there. That's the date of sales in box number 1. The salesperson will be represented there. Whether it's permanent or not will be there. The unit sales price will be the second last one, and the quantity sold will be the last one. So, just to get back to what I was trying to tell you, all of this that you see here, first line of the text file, when the program reads the first line, then this array automatically gets filled with the items that are separated by commas of that text line from the text file. So you can see I've broken up that line into different indexes of an array, which is magically created by Python with this particular line over here. Current line equals line.strip .split at the comma. It really is magical. But here's another thing that I forgot to mention. In fact, everything that is in a text file is actually a string, regardless of whether we want it to be an integer or a floating point number. Remember, float is a decimal number. Regardless of what we want it to be, it will be a string in the text file. And we need to remember that. See, there's our text file. That whole thing is a string. So the 98.4 is also going to be a string, and the 49 will be a string when it goes into this magical little array that you see here after the line that you see here has been executed by the processor. Right, so now we've got the first line. Take note, I'm dealing with the first line of our text file. X is naught at this point, and therefore in ARR sales box number X, which will be naught at this point, we're going to refer to sales NO of our record will be equal to current line box number 0. Where's current line coming from? The magic array over here. It's called current line actually. So you can imagine this is actually an array. It was named current line. We decided to give it the word current line. You can call it anything you want in your code. Current line is here. Basically, it is an array with indices 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that is what it'll look like in memory after the first line is read. So box number 0, 1, 2, 6, 4 is going to go into AR sales. Box number 0, why? Because X is 0, dot sales, NO. So referring to that record item sales NO. And that will be current line number 0. So you can see it visually over here. Current line, that's the array number 0. Remember that every single thing is going to be stored as a string in current line array. Therefore, when we transfer it to our record, if we know that we have a item that is going to be either a floating point number or an integer, then we need to convert our array current line box number or index number into a float. As you can see, we did that with our unit price item and the quantity. We converted our quantity in current line index number 5. Where's current line index number 5? There it is. It's a string. 49 represented as a string. We have to convert it to an integer because of our record. We declared quantity being an integer data type. Now before this for loop ends, we better do something with that X. Otherwise, guess what? X will stay at 0. And every single item in ARR sales will only have the first line of the text file content. We won't move on. We won't have oh wait, no, it'll have every single line. There'll only be one box of ARR sales or index of ARR sales filled, and it will contain the very last item of the text file. So we go and have a look at our text file right all the way down. If we do not add 1 to our X, every single item is going to be read into index number 0 of ARR sales. If we keep X at 0, it's only going to be, everything's going to be read into that. So it'll just overwrite the previous one. But we put X equal to X plus 1, so that therefore inside our for loop we'll have X will then be 1 and 2 and so on, and we can be safe in the knowledge that if there's 171 lines in our text file, then 171 indices of our ARR sales will be filled with the corresponding line of the text file. Now, how do we know that the text file is going to be read constantly until the end? It's in the structure of this for loop here. It says for line in open file. Basically, that line there describes that, well, basically it's going to, the for loop will stop when there's no more lines to be read from the text file represented by the word open file. Remember, open file is a variable we made which refers to open, sales.txt for reading. So for line in open file means for every line in open file, we're going to do the following, all of that. In other words, while there's a line in open file to be read, all of this will happen. And we have to add 1 to X each time, so our array sales will hold the next line and the next line and the next line until it gets to the end. So if we know, we've tested it, that it works for the first line of the text file, therefore it'll work for every single other line. And before the def closes, we have to close our text file. Take note, we opened it over there, open file, and then we have to close it. Open file was opened, can you see? Opened. And now we say open file dot close. That means the text file must be closed. If we don't do that, we might have an error. And remember, open file is a variable name that we made up. Open itself is a reserved word. Close is a reserved word. When I say reserved word, it just means that it's reserved for Python language, and you should not use the words open and close or range or float or str or int or the word class even and import. You shouldn't use the word def or for as variable names. They are reserved for Python programming. Anyway, I hope you've learned a little bit of extra information here. And next we will use our array of sales. We've written everything from the text file. Sorry, this is wrong here. It shouldn't be write to file. Read from file. I am so forgetful. It's read from file. We're not writing to a text file, we're reading from a text file. There. Good enough. But how do we make this happen? This is just a function. How are we going to make read from file work? Well, down here, we will just write the instruction read from file, open bracket, close bracket, and then this def will operate. So, but it won't, because we've just written the word def, doesn't mean it's going to run when we run the program. We have to call it, in other words, instruct the processor to go and do this by writing the call to that procedure right down at the bottom here. And this is in like the main program, and this is a global variable, remember, and this is a global record declaration. So yep, that's it folks for now. Next we will work with our array and how to manipulate and use the information in that array.